everyone, and welcome to Growing Together, a gardening podcast with me, John Lamb, and Don Kinsler, a lifelong gardener in the North Dakota State University Extension horticulturist for Cass County. Don, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I think I've shoveled more snow so far than I did all of last year.
Yeah, we've had a couple of decent snowfalls. Nothing too bad.
But I'm not complaining because cold weather is sure to come. It's coming, and I like the insulation that snow gives. May as well think of the glass as half full.
Yeah.
So as long as we got the snow, because now last year, without much snow across the region here, across our states, there was a lot of dieback in perennials.
Yep.
Come spring, we had not much snow, but we had cold weather. There was a lot of injury on things, and the snow is good for that, good for insulating and protecting. So I'm enjoying it. Also, as I think I've mentioned in past podcasts, when we get a little snow, I can see where the rabbits are going, and if I have an unprotected spot, I can add a little more wire. So I'm looking at the snow as a good thing. I don't want 40 below, but the snow, I can see benefit in.
We can handle a little bit of snow, and plus there are some, if you have a yard that has some kind of wintry aspects, it really kind of highlights that. It gives your yard something nice to look at.
It's pretty.
If you've had, let's say your old hydrangeas are still up, and they haven't fallen down under the weight of snow, because the first little bit we had was pretty wet and heavy. But if you've still got some grasses that are up, then your yard could look really, really nice now.
It does. It almost looks like a Christmas card. Speaking of that, do you have your Christmas shopping done?
No.
No, I neither.
I won't for a while, but I'm looking forward to getting started on it, because today we're going to be talking about some gift ideas for gardeners. And that'll be really fun. We're going to talk.
Gardeners are pretty easy to buy for, actually. Sometimes you don't always think of some of these things. So it's going to be fun to go through a list of things to buy for gardeners.
And some of the things that we will recommend are things that you could have more than one of.
Oh, definitely.
Because that's not a problem, too. And we're going to be talking about things for indoor gardeners, for house plants, for outdoor, for landscaping, for vegetable gardeners, for flower gardeners, just kind of a little bit for everybody. So for all the listeners of the show, hopefully there'll all be ideas for you to get for somebody or for you to ask for something. But first, you've got a question from a listener.
I do. Okay. Michelle writes, "Hello, Don and John. I love your podcast. I listen every week, usually while I'm outside working in my yard or while planning my next project. I have an unusual question, but I thought with your years of experience, you might be able to point me in the right direction. I'm interested in starting some type of employment in the nursery business or something similar. I have no experience, just an interest in trees, shrubs, flowers, and grasses, and a willingness to learn. I'm very open to taking classes to learn more, too. What kind of jobs might be available, and what kind of tasks would these jobs entail? And where would you advise that I even start? Can you give me some ideas for jobs in the field? I should mention that I'm not young, but I have still several years of work left. I know it's a wide topic, but it would be nice for you to have a show on this topic. Thanks, and happy gardening." From Michelle. Thanks. Sometime we should do a program. We should do a podcast on this kind of careers in horticulture and things.
Yeah.
So anyway, Michelle, thanks for listening, and thanks for writing in. And I'm going to email you with some ideas, Michelle. But generally, I would start by going around to the locally owned garden centers, maybe not the national chains, but the locally owned garden centers, meet the owners of those, kind of see if they've got some job openings. A couple of key things that you said. You mentioned that you don't have experience, but willingness to learn. That is key, because garden centers will train you in the way that their operation works. And so that willingness to learn is wonderful. You also mentioned that you're not young, but that's okay, because if you're in a position where maybe you can work part-time or your hours are flexible, that's very important, because in the garden center, oftentimes a lot of work is needed in the spring of the year, maybe less work in this time of year. So the ability to be flexible with your schedule, because oftentimes garden center work may not be an 8 to 5. There's maybe some evenings, weekends during the busy season, so some flexibility. So I would begin just visiting with the locally owned garden centers, see what positions they might have open coming in spring. Now is a good time to start. They've got a little more time maybe to visit with you. And then also as far as training, the Master Gardener program in Cass County is not offered this year, but it will be next year. So watch the headlines for when a Master Gardener training is available. I think that would be great too. But also, experience is always the best teacher. So if you've been gardening, if you're a lifelong gardener, that is an excellent quality to bring. So again, I will email you some of these suggestions, but definitely start by visiting, develop a relationship with the locally owned garden centers.
Well, I think that word that you just said there, relationship, is really key. So Michelle, if you've been going to a certain garden center and you feel comfortable there, then that would be a great place for you to work if they're hiring. And if you've got a relationship there and they know you and you know them, you've already got a foot in the door. And I think, the other thing that you talked about there, Don, too, is flexibility in time, because some of the locally owned garden centers will start production here, really in the first part of next year, the first part of 2026. So there will be some opportunities there for, really getting your hands in the dirt and getting seeds started and things like that. So yeah, there's plenty of opportunity there, and you could start there and kind of move around to different jobs.
Absolutely. I'm going to share one little secret, because Mary and I had our garden center for about 25 years. We hired many, many people. And when we had a job opening and people would come in and interview, there was one comment that we always when people would say it, there was one question that we always had to kind of delve into a little more. And that was if the person said, I always thought it would be fun to work in a greenhouse. That's nice. But I mean, it's a business. Mm-hmm. It can be intense. Yeah. And so it's not all fun. So when we would hear that, we would always want to question more as to, do they have a good work ethic? Do they realize that we need to make a profit in the garden center? And it can be intense at times. And so we always dug deeper. So be cautious of telling the garden center operator that I thought it would always be fun. Instead, bring about your years of gardening experience, your interest in it, your ability to help people, and et cetera. And maybe use caution in using the word fun.
All right. Well, that's great. I mean, good advice there too. And so you'll be reaching out to Michelle and letting her know your thoughts on this.
And anyone that has any questions, comments, successes, failures, send us an email, donald.kinsler, KINZLER @ndsu.edu.
Excellent. Let's not waste any more time. Let's run into the holiday season where we are now.
What are we going to buy for the gardeners on our
right,
list?
Because we're already, this is almost the middle of the month. It's time for we better get on the ball as far as if we've got holiday gifts to get. Where do you want to start? You want to start with maybe some houseplants?
Oh, gosh. Because the gardener on your list, sometimes they'll have different interests. Some are into houseplants, some are into fruit growing. So I thought maybe we could kind of divide these gifts into whatever that interest is in the gardener. So yeah, let's start talking about somebody that likes houseplants. What could we buy those? Now, it maybe doesn't sound like the most romantic thing, but clay pots. Yeah. Old-fashioned unglazed terracotta clay pots. They breathe through the sides, a good oxygen exchange. You don't overwater them as much. And so maybe an assortment of sizes, from smaller on up to larger. And that'd be kind of a treat, to get. I'd like getting that.
Yeah.
I never have enough clay pots.
It is a good gift. It is, because they will be used.
And then also along with those is drainage dishes, they go the clear plastic ones, and there's a difference in quality. Some of the really cheap ones are pretty flexible, flimsy, but there are higher quality drainage dishes that go under. And again, kind of an assortment of sizes. And sometimes over time, they maybe crack or break or do something. So I'm always on the lookout for drainage saucers. And as long as we're talking about houseplants too, a good houseplant book, maybe one that has a section on care of houseplants, but also one that lists all the different types of houseplants, kind of a picture book. Mm-hmm. I've got a couple of those, and they're great resources, that tells the name, maybe even the botanical name of them. So it's just wonderful to have a good reference book. And there have been new varieties of houseplants that have come along. So even though somebody maybe has an older houseplant book, get one of the newer, latest editions on that. And houseplant fertilizers, again, some of these maybe aren't the most romantic gifts. I'm not sure if I bought my wife a little box of fertilizer. It may not be something I'd buy her on Valentine's Day, but yet she would appreciate that, some fertilizer. And, it's fun to start new houseplants from cuttings. So rooting powders, rooting hormones. Mm-hmm. See, some of these are things that maybe a person wouldn't always think of. And houseplant insecticide, the systemic type. So visit the garden center, go to their houseplant insect control area, and it's called systemic houseplant insecticide granules. The label tells the person what to do, but that's always great because insects are always a problem. Or maybe the insecticidal soap, neem oil, and one thing that I've enjoyed, because we have houseplants on our main floor and we have houseplants upstairs, I enjoy having a watering can on both floors. Yep. So I don't have to carry the same one up and down or go upstairs and then I've forgotten the watering can downstairs. So a few years ago, our daughter gave us another watering can, a nice one, not one of the little tiny ones that only holds maybe a quart, but one that holds a gallon or two so that it actually, when you go to the faucet and fill it up, you mean business.
Yeah.
And so, think about that. Terrariums have made a comeback. I remember in the 1970s, terrariums were a big thing. And I guess people were using kind of their fish tanks and stuff and filling them with plants instead. And cutting glass jars. In the 1970s, cutting glass bottles was a thing. I remember that. And you'd cut the top off of a glass jug, make a terrarium. Well, anyway, I don't think glass cutting is in vogue anymore. But the terrariums are, and they have ready-made jugs and different containers. And so a terrarium kit would be great. One
of the things I wanted to add there when you were talking about having, watering cans, maybe one for upstairs or downstairs, one thing to consider is consider who you're giving it to. I know that my mom was looking for a watering can and I found a great deal on a big one that held lots of water. I wasn't really thinking that here she is, she's 85 years old. She's going to have to lift that up to a certain level.
Good point.
So, be considerate of, who you're giving it to. And for some people, smaller watering cans are, and depending on what they need to water, just think about that in mind, that if it's something that will be easy to use for them.
That's a good point too. And because you'll know the person that you're giving it to. And also if their plant shelving is such that they can't water with a big clunky watering can, maybe a smaller kind of one with more finesse might be able to get in between.
Some of the ones with a longer, thinner spout that maybe curve a little bit, or you can get back to something. Those are very handy.
Good point, John, because a few years ago, I did actually buy a small one because our African violets were in kind of a little tight spot. And with that small watering can, I could get in a little more, the nooks and crannies a little better. So good idea to think about the person that you're going to be giving it to.
Yeah. Well, do you want to take a quick little break? When we come back, let's look at lawns and landscapes.
If you're loving this podcast, be sure to check out our full lineup. From news and local politics to sports and true crime, find your next great listen right now at inforum.com/podcasts. That's inforum.com/podcasts.
All right, we're back, and this week we're talking about gardening gifts for the gardener in your life. We were talking about indoor gardening for like house plants, things like that. But let's take it outside. Let's look at for lawns and landscapes. What are some good ideas there?
One thing that's on my wish list is I've seen described handheld lawnmower blade sharpening tools. Okay, because and of course, keeping your lawnmower blade sharp is really important, a good crisp cut. And so to sharpen my blade, I take the blade off, put it in the vise, use a kind of a file, sharpen it down. But I've seen listed that there are handheld lawnmower blade sharpening tools that give a little more precise and that would be easier to use. So lawnmower blade sharpening tool, I think it'd be super. And gardeners don't always buy for themselves the top shelf material, and sprinklers are a good example. I've gone through so many plastic sprinklers that just don't hold up. And so a good metal sprinkler that could be used. I like the kind of back and forth ones, the kind of the oscillating back and forth ones that you can set precisely for that. Or maybe drip type hose.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, where it just kind of oozes out onto the soil.
Drip tape if you've got
so that we're not getting the foliage wet. So and it seems I never have enough of that drip type tape. So that's something that I would sure enjoy. A fertilizer spreader, with adjustable settings, that can be used for grass seed, overseeding, as well as fertilizer. So if somebody doesn't have one, it might be a little hard to wrap for big fertilizer spreader, but maybe put a bow on it.
It comes in a box sometimes.
Exactly, or stick a bow on it. I think would be nice too. And one thing that we bought, not for Christmas, but we got for ourselves, and they always say you should give people something you'd like to get yourself. Okay.
Right.
One thing that we bought this summer was a simple water feature for the landscape. It's just a little self-bubbler waterfall type thing, not an elaborate unit. But it had just a little kind of pond and then a little almost made like its little own waterfall. The water just came kind of off of a shelf and down into the little simple vinyl pond. And so I think anyone would enjoy having, especially in an area where they sit, maybe by patio, a simple water feature. They aren't that expensive, some are not that elaborate.
Well, and something like that is kind of nice too, because here in the middle of winter, you're going to be thinking about where you're going to put that outside. It's giving you also that kind of mental gift too of being able to think about warmer weather and
person's visualizing spring and listening to some water flowing again. And things that add interest to plantings, sundial, that gives kind of a neat kind of classic look to a landscape, a statuary. Mm-hmm. We added this last summer, a gazing ball on a pedestal.
Okay.
And so that would make a nice Christmas gift for somebody for a perennial flower bed or a landscape pedestal with a gazing ball on. And they look like glass, but they're pretty unbreakable.
Okay.
So I think that would be kind of a neat idea. And pruning loppers. You mentioned how sometimes some things you don't have enough of. You could use a second, okay?
Yes.
A lot of gardeners probably have a pruning shears, but a second lopper or a second handheld pruning shears would be awesome because maybe you could keep one in the garage, one out if you have garden shed, maybe one out there, or I've been known to set one down and not find it until at a later date. So if I have a backup pair in the garage, I like that. And dandelion diggers, that works great. Hose end sprayer for applying herbicides and insecticides. The screw-on jars that you just pour the material in, dial the top to whatever it says. If it says 1 tablespoon per gallon, you just dial that and spray, and off you go. I use those hose end sprayers quite a bit. So are there some things that you've thought of for like the lawn and landscape and outdoor gardening?
Well, one thing that I think we've got a couple of years ago, and I would really recommend it to people, is especially if you have, depending on your yard, knowing your space, but a hose reel. a retractable hose reel is really nice because we had a space where we would run the hose directly from the faucet out into the backyard, and then you have to pull it back, you have to wind it up, and you have to loop it around, and whatever, however you're storing it, it becomes a chore, and sometimes you just feel like after you water, well, I'll get back to it later, and you don't.
And then there the hose lays, then it's time to mow, and then there the hose lays.
A retractable reel is pretty slick because you pull it out to the degree that you need it. Usually it's 50, 80, 100 feet, 120 feet. And there you are.
Have you ever mowed over a hose and got it caught?
Oh, I can't imagine. No, that sounds.
Yes, well, I speak from experience. If I had a hose reel, which a year ago we did actually get one, but that's a great gift idea.
And it is, and I mean, I think there's a Hose Link is kind of like the Cadillac of them, and it runs. It's on the pricier side. It's the pricier one.
But again, sometimes quality.
Quality
for Christmas
matters,
gifts, the gardener might not buy themselves quality, so let's give them some quality.
Yeah, and you can certainly get cheaper ones, but yeah, like you say, sometimes the quality matters. So that's a good thing to consider. When we were talking about you can never have too many prunes or shears, things like that. One thing that I got a couple of years ago is I just gave Sam just a little tote because we had so many of them, and she was always asking where they were. I'm like, okay, we've got a tote. We'll label it, and that's where they go. I got another tote for gardening gloves because you will need different types of gardening gloves for different kind of jobs. Whether you're lifting brick or pulling something, you don't want to use your really finesse gardening gloves for that. Also, like as you've pointed out, if you work with roses a lot, get yourself a pair of welding gloves.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And so another thing, just get a tote for somebody and say a small tote and say, this is where your gloves go. Put a little label on it. This is where your shears go. This is where your other tools go. That's a nice little easy thing to do.
When you mention totes, sometimes I think, gosh, what did we do before plastic totes? The other thing that brings to mind, John, is 5-gallon buckets.
Yep.
A person never has enough 5-gallon buckets when you're out in the yard gardening, for mixing up fertilizer or different things like that, or even mixing up small batches of potting soil, mixing things up. Boy, I hope Mary's listening. Maybe I'll get some 5-gallon buckets for Christmas.
Well, and I know, and we're talking about lawn and landscaping here, but we're going to be moving into talking about vegetable and fruit growers. Another thing too is a watering wand. I think that these are really handy because, as you pointed out just a couple minutes ago, you don't necessarily want to water the leaves. You want to get right down to the base of something. And so whether you're somebody who either has mobility issues, if it's hard for you to lean over and water, or if you have things that are up high, if you've got pots that are suspended or things like planters, a watering wand is really nice. And I would also say look for one that has different settings, because sometimes you want to like maybe a little bit more of a mist. Sometimes you want like a cone. I use mine to help wash down hornets' nests after I spray them.
Good idea.
But a watering wand is really kind of
metal
nice.
Instead of plastic. I've dropped plastic ones with a plastic nozzle and cracked that, and then there that goes. So good metal.
Yeah, and another thing, like you were talking about having statuary or sundials, things like that. I think bird feeders, butterfly feeders, or bird bath, or even a pollinator habitat, things like that, where you're going to be able to see. We love being able to see the garden and our flowers and our vegetables grow, but it's also nice to see things in there enjoying it, and it's nice to see the birds coming through. It's great to see the pollinators and the butterflies out there working their way through. Setting up things for them too is really nice, and it's really fun to see. And it's just it's a great benefit. Like after you're done doing the job, when you can sit back and look, and if there are birds that are chirping away and in the neighborhood, or the butterflies coming through, that's really great to see.
In a bird feeder setup type thing too, that would be something good, a Christmas gift. They could start enjoying that right away now too.
Yeah.
Put that up and watch the birds come during the wintertime here. Great idea.
Well, let's talk about vegetables.
Now, again, many gardeners, some of these things are going to seem so practical, but I think a gardener would smile. For example, for vegetable gardening, gardener, a ball of heavy twine and some sturdy wood stakes, to stretch the twine in between the sturdy stakes so you get good straight rows. Or if you're doing square foot gardening, to kind of mark off the 1 foot squares, heavy good twine.
Talking about things that you can never have too many of, that, or what are they called? The T-bars? Those kind of metal posts that you kind of pound into the ground. We needed more of those this year. This was our first year where we really tried to stake up a lot of things, especially tomato plants. And boy, you do need a lot of,
to support chicken wire for rabbit fencing.
You need a lot of twine. You need a lot of stakes. Those things you really cannot have enough of.
Exactly. And then markers to identify plants. There's garden centers have different types of varying for all the way from plastic ones to heavier metal type stakes that you can use to label and identify your shrubs and perennials and things.
And that's great.
Never have enough of those.
Especially if you think that you're going to be having people over. It was great to go on the garden tour this summer and to see having somebody kind of give you a guided walkthrough, and you can ask questions of pointing that out. But sometimes it's nice just to have like little labels there. Nothing so obtrusive like at a garden center where it's big and it's got all the information there, but just something that's got a nice little label there. It's nice to see. It's discreet. It helps the people who are looking at it. So if you plan on having yard parties, that's a great thing. Also, if you've got somebody who's watering your garden that may not be used to it, and you may need to point things out like this needs so much water or this needs this kind of care, that's great to have that information there.
It is great. And, of course, in the vegetable garden, lots of times we need to prevent insects from eating up our stuff. So a 2-gallon pump sprayer, I think, is just so great for applying insecticides and things. And, of course, that you can use for flowers, vegetables, good high-quality hoe. Some of the good hoes that are going to last a lifetime for a gardener, they're not always cheap. A person may be if $100 is an amount that you want to spend on your gardener, a good high quality, good steel blade, good sharp, thin weeding hoe might cost $100, but they're going to have that they'll probably pass that on to their children. And, of course, fruit tree growers. The best apples always seem to be a little out of reach. So one of the apple pickers on a pole.
Yeah.
Those are handy. I don't have one of those. And so hopefully someone will give one of those to me. A pole pruner to help reduce the height of the apple trees, because they want to keep growing on and upward, and then they become hard to pick. So a pole pruner to help eliminate or reduce the height. And, of course, tree wraps, very important for fruit trees. You might even visit the garden center and buy a bottle of fruit tree spray, the concentrate, so that then in the spring, your gardener will have that on hand ready to protect the apple crop from insects and diseases. And of course, that's something that the fruit tree spray probably need a new bottle every year. So chances are your gardener might not have that yet. So you'll save them a trip to the garden center.
All right, let's take another quick break, and when we come back, let's talk about for the flower gardener in your life.
Get 6 months of local news for just $2. You get unlimited access to the news and information you need to stay connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to get 6 months of local news for just $2.
All right, we're back, and this week we're talking about gift ideas for the gardener in your life. We've talked about indoor house plants. We talked about lawn and landscape. We talked about fruits and vegetables. But let's talk about the flower gardeners. What are some good ideas for flower gardeners?
Oh, man, one thing that a flower gardener would really enjoy is an indoor plant light to start their own seedlings. Oh gosh, because with a simple plant light, you can start petunias from seed, zinnias, marigolds, you name it. There's a lot of bedding plants, either for flower bed or for your pots and planters, that you could start yourself indoors. And the light setup doesn't have to be elaborate. A simple LED or fluorescent. It can be a plant light, but it doesn't have to be. Even a regular LED shop type light will work. I might make a suggestion, though, that instead of a round type bulb, that it be a longer horizontal shop type light, and preferably with two bulbs in it, so that a tray of flowers will fit, a tray of seedlings will fit nicely under that.
Okay.
And so if it's a horizontal shop type light instead of a round unit, you'll get you'll be able to grow more under that. A round type bulb is more concentrated, like on one plant right below it. So shop type light to grow seedlings under. And as long as we're starting seeds, we need a heat mat.
Yeah.
Garden centers have special heat mats on which you'll set your seed trays, and that can make all the difference. That's a vital part of starting your own seeds. And sometimes if you're going to start a number of seeds, you need more than one heat mat. I actually have 4 of them.
Okay.
So even if your gardener has one already, maybe a second one is exactly
and they're not that expensive.
what they need. No, they aren't. No.
They're pretty affordable.
Garden centers have them. You can also buy them online. They're called seed germinating heat mats. And so don't buy a heat blanket.
No.
Don't buy an electric
that
blanket for using that. I've seen
yes.
some people have actually tried to use those, but no, these are specially for this situation. Rain barrel. Rain barrels have made a comeback, so you can buy rain barrels that have a little spigot down at the bottom that you can attach a hose to, so that when you put that by your downspout, you can then have some good fresh water for watering plants. Or my mom always used that for her house plants. And so that's a good idea. A potting bench.
Okay, yeah.
Out, maybe if you do a lot of things in the basement, maybe a potting bench indoors, but you can buy ready-to-assemble potting benches, and one out beside the garage would be really nice, so that when you're doing outside, maybe some transplanting, potting up things, to have a dedicated bench right there.
Yeah.
I think it'd be an awesome idea. And for flower gardeners, Osmocote. Do a little searching for Osmocote. Osmocote is the most popular brand of slow-release fertilizer. It's little beads, and the direction will tell for flowering containers how many little scoops to put in a certain size container. So that will feed outdoor flowering containers for most of the summer. So very important for getting good blooms. So anyone that likes flowering containers outside will appreciate if you've given them the timed release fertilizers such as Osmocote. And of course, we already mentioned labels and things that they can write on. You can buy little plastic labels, especially for labeling seed trays. It's important to keep track of what varieties. For example, if you're starting tomatoes indoors, you need to label which types are the early ones, which type are later, etc. So even the little plastic, they're probably 3 or 4 inches. A person can buy 100 for not too expensive online or at a garden center, and those are great for starting seeds. If they come in batches of 100, they'll have those for a couple of years probably.
And for people who are, if you've got somebody who's really serious about being a flower gardener, and especially likes cut flowers, if they're growing zinnias, things like that they want to cut, just give them a nice vase.
Good point.
Just think, and that's kind of a way of saying, hey, for you, for when your flowers come in, think of me or whatever. But, just having a nice little vase there, because that's the thing that we've started doing more of. And it's so nice to be able to bring in flowers from your garden and have them in your house and to see them. It's just, it's so great to bring the outside inside like that is such a big thrill.
You're making me think of bringing our lilies in. When the lilies are blooming, bringing those in. Some of them have such a tremendous aroma. And so you got me thinking spring already. And the fun thing about giving some of these things at Christmas time, your gardener will be thinking about spring already.
Yeah.
And, we've talked a lot about shopping at your locally owned garden center. A gift certificate. Man, I love
smart gift.
Yes, a gift certificate from their favorite, or maybe a new locally owned garden center that they've never been to before. Maybe even if it's one a little out of town, but within a driving distance, it would be a great idea. Or if your town has a local garden club and and your gardener doesn't belong to it, maybe check that out. Give them a year's subscription, a membership to that. Oh, and a gardening book. I got to mention the gardening book, The Prairie Garden. I'm on the board of that nonprofit that produces that book. We meet once a month to create these wonderful gardening books that are so tailored to the northern growing areas. So again, just simply search online The Prairie Garden, and you'll find that book series. The hot off the press 2026 edition is called Shaping Spaces, that helps each of us kind of better utilize our space, whether we're doing flowers, whether we're doing vegetable gardening, fruit gardening. So those books have a little something for every gardener. And as we talk about things just generally for any gardener, wind chimes.
Yep.
I've got a wind chime that my dad had, and so every time I hear that tingling, I think of my dad.
Yeah.
So a wind chime is, I think, a great gardening benches. It's funny. We've got a couple of gardening benches, and I rarely sit in them because I'm busy weeding.
Yep.
But it's relaxing knowing that bench is there. That if ever I get time. And so, and many of those are in nice boxes, kind of assemble it yourself type boxes. A year ago, our daughter and son-in-law gave us 2 rockers, wooden rockers to put on our front porch.
Nice.
And they were, you had to assemble them yourself, but that was okay. I just waited until spring and then assembled them, and there we are.
Yeah.
And so many good things. Rabbit and deer repellent, all gardeners need that. Trellises, things such as that. A good quality rain gauge.
Yes.
I have broken so many of the small little tube rain gauges because in the fall they had some moisture in, then I didn't get them dumped before the freezing came. And then, so a good quality rain gauge, with the wider cylinder that can measure rain quite a bit more accurately than the little narrow tubes. So a rain gauge, because many of us gardeners, we're all about knowing how much rain we got, so we know if we need to give some additional moisture to it. So it's kind of fun. Gardeners are pretty easy to buy for, I think.
One thing I think we've talked about in the past, I don't think you got it as a gift, but I think you gave it yourself. You got yourself didn't you get yourself a kneeler or something like that?
Yes.
That is kind of
I don't know how I lived without it.
It is a great gift for anybody, both to have the cushions there, but yours has a little support on the side so you can push yourself up, right?
Exactly. And before I got that kneeler, even when I was a bit younger, my knees got what the doctor called carpet layer's knee, because, and you don't have to be beyond middle age to have your knees swell up, just because if you're kneeling on clumpy soil, and so my knees kind of swelled up, it went away. But anyway, having the kneeling pad, I haven't had that problem since. And also the one that I have, it's a cushion pad, but also then it has the 2 side supports. So as I got a little older now, I can boost myself up a little easier off of that. And it also has pouches on the side of those uprights that I can put the pruning shears and the other things. So I'm much less apt to leave a pruning shears lay somewhere.
Yeah.
And so, so any gardener is going to enjoy that.
I got to say, this is a time when I should apologize and say that as this show, we don't have any swag or merch that we can tell people to buy. We should look into that. And I think maybe let's talk about this. Maybe you did a calendar a couple of years ago that was very, very popular. Maybe we should bring back the Don Kinsler calendar.
We should, yes. That was a gardening calendar that had, we did that kind of in conjunction with Form Communications, a gardening calendar, and had nice, pretty inspiring pictures too, but it had all the different when-tos for northern gardening.
Yep.
For example, the when to apply crabgrass preventer, and when to divide peonies. So right there, as you turned each month, it had those when-tos on there. Yep. And so maybe it's time to resurrect the northern gardening calendar.
Yeah, let's see if we could do that. For probably too late to do it for 2026, but maybe 2027 we could get that.
Let's plan ahead. I think that would be an awesome idea again.
I think the one thing that we could probably both agree on, the best gift that you could get, two-part thing, is time and labor.
Definitely.
And if you're limited funds or you don't know what a specific thing, give somebody an IOU for, I will help you do this. I will help you weed. I will help you clean gutters. I will mow your lawn. You sharpen blades. Find somebody who, that's something you can do in the off season here. You can sharpen blades of a lawnmower, of your shears, different things like that. Those things are always appreciated. Give somebody a nice little card and an IOU that says, I will help you in your garden this year, and that will be really, really appreciated.
Oh, it will. And, some tasks are two-person jobs.
Yes.
And, for example, I'm glad you mentioned that because, for example, moving our porch furniture up we put it down in the basement so it doesn't get so worn out in the wintertime and blow over and break and all that. So we move our stuff down into the basement, and some of those items are two-person. So yes, if my son gave me an IOU to help in the spring move, specifically, I'll help you move the patio furniture back out, the porch furniture back out. Wow, what a gift!
Right? Yeah, you think about it too. That would be a really wonderful thing to do. And it's time spent with somebody. And that is really, I think, the most valuable thing.
What's going to be the hardest part? Since we brought up so many useful things, and the majority of them I could use myself, and it's going to be hard for the people listening. Okay, there's so many things to choose from. What am I going to exactly choose? So hopefully we've given some ideas for the gardener in your life and on your Christmas gift list.
All right, Don, this is great. Well, if people have ideas for other gardening gift ideas, or if they want to share their favorite gifts that they've given or received, or if they want to talk about what they're looking forward to next year, what they were really proud of this year, what they learned in the garden, what's the best way to reach you?
Send us an email, donald.kinsler, KINZLER, at ndsu.edu. And thanks to all of you who do write in. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks a lot, Don. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone, for listening.